Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chia and this is Lulu's Leaves. I'm bringing back the old intro because everyone hated what I changed. So apparently no one likes change, and that's okay. So I'm gonna stick with my current intro. But yeah, today's video is going to be a fun one. I'm gonna talk about some plants that I just don't like, that a lot of people really do like. So I'm gonna be talking about popular plants that I'm just not super into right now. And you know what? That's okay. We all have our different plant preferences, and this is mine, but me saying I don't like a certain plant doesn't mean much. They are still all very beautiful, but they're probably plants that I wouldn't buy, and that's not to say that I won't buy them in the future, but as of right now, they're not plants that I'm super obsessed with. And as always, I might throw in some extras that I would get instead of those plants, just to give you some options in case you don't want to spend the money on these certain plants, because a lot of them are a little bit more expensive. So with that being said, if you guys are not already subscribed to my channel, definitely click that button down below and give this video a thumbs up. Also, if you want to be entered into the giveaway to win a $20 Amazon gift card, all you have to do on top of subscribing and liking this video is leave a comment down below. Also, if you've not already checked out my YouTube memberships, they are linked down below as well. Or if you see the join button, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. You can also click that button to join. But there is some extra content over there at the top 2 tiers, and you can join a Discord group chat at any tier. So if you are interested at all in that, definitely go check it out down below. But that's going to be all before we get into today's video. I really hope you guys do enjoy it. The first popular houseplant that I'm not super obsessed with is the Hoya Polynora. This is a really cool plant. It's also called the fishtail Hoya. It is also a plant that I have had before, but it seemed to be a pretty slow grower, at least in my care. I know that some Hoyas do go through periods where they will grow a ton, and then they also go through periods where they don't grow at all. So that could be just my personal plant that wasn't growing for me. But it's also just not my favorite plant in terms of its growth pattern. I don't love when plants need to be trailing to look their best, and this is definitely one that looks a little bit awkward until it starts filling out. And another thing with this plant is it is very expensive, so if you do want a plant that already looks grown out and really beautiful, you will probably be spending over $200. If you want a cutting of 2 leaves, you're probably going to be spending over $50 at the minimum. So with that being said, I just personally wouldn't buy this one at a smaller size. I wouldn't not buy this plant if the price went down, but because it's so expensive to buy a nice trailing one right now, it's just not one that I'm willing to spend the money on. I will also say that there are some different versions of this plant. There's actually one that has not made its way into Canada, I don't think. It is the Albo Marginata Polynora, which does look very beautiful. And then there's also a silvery Brogée, I think it's called. And that one is very beautiful, but it's also a pretty penny, so not in my budget right now. The next plant that I want to talk about that I'm not super duper into right now is the Anthurium Vitarifolium. This is a plant that is very beautiful, but it also does take a little bit of time to get to its full beautiful state. This is a plant that has really nice long strappy leaves when it is mature, but in most cases you're not going to be able to find a super mature one for a decent price. So you are typically going to buy one that is more upright and looks a little bit odd. And while they do grow in size pretty quickly, it's again a plant that I just don't love at a small size and can't afford at a large size. So it is one that I'm not super into. Even though it is a beautiful plant, there's not much to it other than the fact that it's a strappy plant. If you like a long trailing anthurium with no prominent veins or anything like that, this might be the plant for you. But since I'm more of a lover of veiny plants and larger leaves, it's not really my cup of tea. This is also a plant that I have had in the past, but probably not one that I will get again unless I can find a really nice larger specimen for a lower price tag. I will also say that there are some alternatives to this plant that are more expensive, again, like the Polynora, and are a little bit more pretty in my opinion, but I also can't afford those. So that is a story for another day, but the Anthurium Vitarifolium will not be coming home with me in the next little bit at least. The next plant that I want to talk about is the Philodendron Bob C. This is one that I've seen on a few other YouTubers' channels in the last little bit, and they are, again, really beautiful plants, but they only stay unique, and I say that cautiously. I still think they look like a lot of other plants. They only look unique until they grow up. And when they do grow up, I find they look a lot like the Thimatophyllum bipinnatifidum. I think that's how you pronounce it. That's how I've been pronouncing it since I started my plant journey. But this is a plant that I just don't see ever making it into my collection unless it's a really inexpensive plant or if I can find one in a trade. But I don't think I would give away any of my valuable plants for this plant. I'm sorry if you love this plant. Again, it is really pretty, but I just don't see the point in spending all that money on this plant when it looks so similar to one you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot for $30 and at a large size. So the Bob C is not one that I will be taking home either, but if you do like it and you want it, that's great. It's just not for me, and that's okay. I will say though, it does have some pretty cool, almost saw-like leaves when it is young, and maybe they do stay that way for a while, but the ones that I've seen on Google and on Instagram just look way too similar to the Thimatophyllum for me to be into them. The next plant on this list is not one that I necessarily hate, but it's one that I could definitely do without because there are alternatives that I like way better. The plant that I am talking about is the Philodendron Ediba Puenzi. This is a cool plant, and I know that a lot of my friends, Ashley, loves this plant, but it's just not for me. I do think it's cool with the frostier front on the leaves and then the nice purpley backs, but I don't like the lack of prominent veining or just anything on the front of that leaf. They do have the same elongated shape as the Biliaceae or the Ediba Puenzi Biliaceae cross, but just not enough for me to really go for it. I will say I really do like the cross between the Biliaceae and the Ediba Puenzi. That is a plant that I could actually see myself getting, but there are some plants that I'm definitely eyeing up more than that plant, so I probably won't be getting the Ediba Puenzi or the cross anytime soon. I also do have a Philodendron Biliaceae, so there's really no point in me going after one that looks so similar at this point. Down the road, if I do have some more space, it's not to say I won't get the cross and the Ediba Puenzi. I just can't see myself getting it now with my limited space and with the fact that I have the Biliaceae and it looks so similar. I will say that I do see the appeal. I know that red backs are something that a lot of people are into, but I do think there are plants with red backs that I would prefer that have different leaf shapes than the Ediba Puenzi that I would get before getting this plant. So yeah, that's the Philodendron Ediba Puenzi. The next plant is one that I likely will end up getting, even though I don't really love it right now, because there is a shortage, or there is projected to be a shortage of these plants in the next little bit. I am talking about the Syngonium Chia. I actually thought I wanted this plant for a really long time because it is very, very beautiful, or at least I thought it was until I saw it in person. I will say I really like the leaf shape of the Chia, but I prefer the frosted heart so much more. And a lot of people think that the frosted heart is just a variegated Chia, and it might be, but I don't think that it is. From what I've heard and from what I've seen and from what I've felt, they are very different plants. The texture on the Chia is very shiny and leathery, where the texture on the frosted heart is a little bit more sandpapery, and I don't know how to explain that, but there seem to be a lot of little lines in that plant that give it a really cool texture. And I just like that more matte look on the Syngoniums rather than that shiny more plain green leaf, if that makes sense. This is one plant that I probably will not buy, but if I can trade for one, I might do that. It's just not my favorite thing in the world, but again, it's not the worst thing in the world. And I am on a bit of a Syngonium kick, so who knows, it may end up in my collection. Don't, hate me if I end up with this plant, but right now it's just not my favorite. So the next plant on this list is actually one that I really don't like. And I wouldn't say this about many plants, but this is one that I had and I really didn't like it. It didn't grow anything like I thought it would, and it stays very small and scrawny for a while. So let me just tell you what this plant is. I am talking about the Philodendron Brantianum. I don't think that I'm the only one with this opinion. I know there are a lot of people that really like the Brantianum, but you really like it until you have it, and then you see how it grows. Unless you have one that grows really well for you and maybe it's trailing and looking really beautiful, or it's on a pole and it's getting larger leaves, you probably don't love it. My experience with this plant was pretty brutal, honestly. I had mine going up a moss pole and it was really cute when I got it. It had a few leaves, but as soon as I started growing it and growing it out of high humidity, those leaves just got really, really tiny and they would barely unfurl. So I was stuck with a plant with a few nice leaves at the bottom, and then at the top of the pole, I was just getting the most pathetic excuse for leaves. And I don't love that about a plant. I don't love a plant that is difficult to grow even at an average size. I wasn't looking for those crazy, beautiful, elongated leaves like you see sometimes, but I did want a plant that was at least going to grow okay for me, and this one just didn't. So I did trade it off, and this is again a plant that I definitely will not be getting again unless I can find one that is already in a really mature stage, because I do think they look really beautiful when they get those nice elongated leaves, but it's also very, very difficult to get them that way. So probably not a plant that I'm going to be getting in the next little bit unless I can find one that's large. The next plant on this list is one that I have had, but I didn't have the exact same type. I don't know. Let me just show you the plant and then I'll explain myself. So I'm talking about the Hoya Carry Eye Splash. And I did have the Hoya Carry Eye, but I did not have the Hoya Carry Eye Splash. There is a big difference between these guys, and the biggest difference is in price. Honestly, I do not see why this plant would be so much more expensive, because I've never seen a Hoya Carry Eye that is so splashy that it deserves such a high price tag. And I'm not saying they're going for a crazy amount, but I can find a Hoya Carry Eye with no splash for about $15, and then these splashy Hoya Carry Eyes for the same amount of leaves are going for around $70. So I really don't see in this case the need for that jump in price, especially when they are so readily available. Also, if you're not really aware, in Hoyas, a splashy plant is not a different species. It's the same species, it's just got different genetics. So that splashiness could actually disappear pretty easily, and it can also appear sometimes in different conditions. Usually it's not going to appear because it is usually from the genetics of the plant, but they can lose that splashiness. So again, it's not a plant that I would spend that kind of money on, because it's not a guarantee that you're going to continue to get that splashiness. And the Hoya Carry Eye just grows really strange. I actually gave mine away because I wasn't loving it. It just kind of grows up, and the stem is really, really thick on it. So it's not easily woven around a trellis unless it grows around one. So that's my 2 cents on the Hoya Carry Eye Splash. As you can tell, I'm not a huge fan of that plant, but I don't hate it, I just don't love it. So the last plant on this list is one that honestly I haven't really given too much thought about, but it's definitely one that I will not be getting. It's just way too similar to a really inexpensive plant for me to want this, and I am talking about the Philodendron, and I am talking about the Epipremnum pinnatum aurea. And is it aurea or aureum? I think it might be Aureum in this case. This plant looks way too similar to a golden pothos for me to want it. I wouldn't say that it's as expensive as the white Epipremnum variegata or Epipremnum pinnatum variegata, but it is still pretty pricey compared to its very similar lookalike, which is the cheapest pothos you can get. So with that being said, it's not a plant that I would purchase just because there are so many pothos that look so similar to it, and honestly it's just not flashy enough for me. I think I would like the plant more if the variegation didn't come out so similar to the golden pothos, and if it had more harsh lines around that variegation, if that makes any sense. Because I know that the Epipremnum pinnatum albo gets very sectoral, but this I haven't seen get sectoral at all. It looks very splotchy like the golden pothos. So if there's an example of one that is more sectoral, I might be interested in it, but I am not interested in it if it looks like a golden pothos. Well guys, that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about some of the plants that I don't love right now. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Also subscribe down below and leave a comment to be entered into the $20 Amazon gift card giveaway. But yeah, also don't forget about my memberships if you are interested. The link is down below and we would love to have you over there in that community, but no pressure. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye!